The Rise of Africa, the continent, the diaspora, and BRICS explores the relationships that are affecting the global economy right now. This book explores the relationships of the African diaspora's influence on the African continent and why this is important in stabilizing relationships with an understanding of how BRICS impacts the future, good or bad. You can order your copy of The Rise of Africa today on Amazon.com.
Neo-diplomacy is the new currency. Neo-diplomacy is the new currency. The reason that I can say that is you have a couple of different factors occurring right now as we speak on the world stage. The dollar is being disrupted. Nations are no longer wanting to engage with the United States. But the third factor that affects each and every one of us is that there is a diaspora from the African continent that's willing and able to engage our brothers and sisters on the continent.
Well, shalom, salama, siyemi, shalom. Greetings to all my Israelite brothers and sisters from around the world, whether of the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the house of Israel, or you are a Gentile grafted into the house under the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach. I welcome you this morning. Sorry, family, I want to apologize because due to some unforeseen air situations, I am coming on a little bit later than I wanted to. I was trying to do 6:40, but it had to be pushed back to 6:45. And that was very interesting because this morning, as I got up, my body was actually nice and refreshed. And then the enemy comes in like a flood. And you know it's the enemy. You know it is. But you have to go through the motions with what the Most High is providing in terms of the situation. And so it's interesting. I had a couple weeks ago, my daughter's dog is over because when I take in Ray to get his vet checkups, I'll also take my daughter's dog since I signed them up at both at the same time for the little wellness treatment plan. And then a couple of weeks ago, my daughter had asked, she said, "Dad, I was at such a place because the where I'm at in Tampa, Hillsborough County, you're not that far from a lot of people, in terms of connections." And so one of her friends who had also purchased from the same litter, she had disclosed something that had a pause for concern for my daughter. And she had stated that, oh, I think that that puppy, that was one of the puppies that, or that was the puppy that wasn't breeding, or excuse me, breathing. That was the puppy that wasn't breathing. And so I've gone through kind of a week-long discourse with the breeder. And then yesterday, uh, because there's been some problems. The night before was a problem. And then this morning was a big, huge problem. And even getting the dog to the vet was a problem yesterday. And so I spoke to the vet, and these are the large, national chains, and all they do is just do the run of the mill checkups and everything else. Way different than you get from a, local vet. I've had both. And so when I explained the situation to the vet, the nurse was, uh-huh, yeah, uh-huh, we're gonna get this. And I was just thinking, she ain't listening. At that time it was about five, or excuse me, four. No, it wasn't even, it was 5 o'clock. People are picking up their pets because they're coming home from work. And it was busy, and I knew it was busy. So I was just like, okay, I probably won't get the answer that I'm looking for. And eventually I didn't. And so what we're going to have to do, my daughter's going to have to do some other treatments to help with the brain develop and things of that nature, because, you have a dog that has developmental issues that can be quite frustrating. And, a lot of people don't want to deal with a dog that has developmental issues or even developmental delays. And my youngest, she's very smart and keen. She did her investigation. She said, Dad, I looked at all the other siblings of the dog, and they're working, performing well, functioning well. But I told her, I said, listen, the deal, he just wanted to get the dog off the hands, and we were that willing buyer, because we got it for really cheap. We got it for really cheap. But the funny thing is that, isn't that what we do as a people? Yeah, I got a good deal on a dog, and then the dog has issues because the dog has developmental delays. I've had that for two of my dogs when I was living in New Jersey. My grandmother would just say, a dog is a dog. She grew up in the South. And then you realize, no, a dog is not a dog, because a dog needs to be You have to take into consideration the breed, the bloodline, the training capacity of the personalities of the parents. That all is actually a big deal because it really is something that's substantial. And if you don't plan for it correctly, if you don't look at that correctly, then it is going to be an investment that will end up in heartbreak. Because when you're a child and you're coming along and this is your first dog in life or your first couple of dogs, you grow that emotional connection. And then when you realize that the dog has issues and your emotional connection doesn't really grow like that, you then want to get rid of that connection because you understand that it becomes a lot more of a heartache. And then that heartache could have been rather avoided had things been disclosed. So that is now the situation that my daughter is grappling with to keep the dog or get rid of the dog. I mean, she's a cute dog, but yeah, those developmental issues, they have issues, they have concerns. And I had those concerns also. And I was just thinking, I said, well, maybe because my German Shepherd was really awesome, this other dog may not have, you get those skews, right? Things could get skewed because we've lived in a world where we look at something because we've been exposed to something. And now when that world is changing, because you're seeing deficiencies, and now you have to come to grasp that those deficiencies are not the deficiency, are it's not the same. And if you entertain those deficiencies, sometimes those deficiencies can actually cost you and have you come to your ruin. I say all that to say this in my anecdote, and thank you for bearing with me. There was a long anecdote. We're now living in an age where you now have these deficiencies. And you're now living in an age where I'm looking at news stories and articles, and I kid you not. I kid you not. They have articles like adults getting late stage autism. And I think for the sake of this article and for the sake of sensitivities, I'll just post that right there in the chat. You've also had some counter articles that have stated that, well, they may be developed or diagnosed later in life. So you have a diagnosis of a mental health condition. I don't know how else to say it. But the problem is that we have seen this and worked with this and gotten around this because we've had to have dealt with the people that have had spiritual developmental delays. And now that they're having problems and concerns because the church, white Jesus, is no longer looking out for them, quote unquote, they're now having to resort to different tactics because these tactics are all the same. The tactics are when you have a societal developmental delay, which it was, when you're not used to hard work, which they proved that with the town in the Ozarks. Said it won't even be that long. And now understand, I think it's funny because they did the okey doke, right? They pulled the good old trick bag. What's the good old trick bag? Do you know how many towns here in the United States are whites only towns, are sundown towns? But what that person, that founder was trying to do, he was trying to do something called subtle recruiting. Subtle. Well, it's a whites only town. And now we're going to go online and we're going to put this on out there because there's probably a failure and there's probably some failings. And they're trying to get the backlash because then they're trying to get, guess what? Black folks and Mexicans to come through. You may not live within the town space per se, but we can definitely hire you as day laborers to work the whites only town. Because why? Because the whole thing is, why would you even need to advertise mainstream to anyway? You could post that mess on X. You could post it on Reddit or some other national front channels. No, they did mainstream because they understood that they were getting desperate. Their cities, their societies have never functioned without us. If you didn't know, if you didn't understand that. And now you're starting to see the inevitable collapse because what they're trying to do, this is just basically based on my opinion, they're trying to ensure that they have enough national security, quote unquote, that when civil unrest and civil uprising happens, that they're able to work through that civil unrest, that they're able to be secure during those civil uprisings. You know, he just signed in the flag burning law, I guess, sometime yesterday. But what does that really mean? Does anybody really get offended by the flag being burned? I mean, it's an inanimate object. Well, the reality is, it's more than an object for them. It's a god. It's their idol. We would say, and, but understand that's what they worship. It's idol worship. So now they had to make sure that their idolatry is codified, because that doesn't make a crowd feel a certain sort of way, as was stated. It makes them feel a certain sort of way because that is their God. Their God that's encased in stars. That is the symbologies of the Raphans, the Molechs, the Dagons. Understand how they are utilizing that symbology, and we don't even really know it. And yes, that is their Nebuchadnezzar statue. Absolutely, Brother Garth. Because what happens at the sound of X, Y, and Z, at the sounds of the music playing, well, you don't have to bow down anymore. That's a bit much. So just put your hand over your heart. Or give a salute. It's an acknowledgement of the deity of the principality that is being served. So they want to try to quote unquote ruffle the feathers. But the reality is it's all still smoke and mirrors, because the reality is, why would you have the National Guard going into all these quote unquote black cities? See, I think we're on track to understand the vulnerable population groups of human testing and trials and things of that nature, especially on our folks that have and that lead the way, because let's just face it, this life is hard. And a lot of our people have just given up. But then I had to come to terms of, this is a more calculated approach. No, I believe that they'll probably, over the next 90 days, deploy National Guard troops all over the nation. And they'll be smooth with it. They'll say, well, because of threats that's happening around the world, and because of deteriorating conditions with Russia and the climate of everything going on, then okay, that's a believable story. That's plausible. All right, no worries. But understand the geolocation of what they're actually looking at and what they're saying. It's going to quickly change to the effort that this was all designed to do. Well, black folks don't really want to join the military like that. Black folks are saying that they're just opting out for 4 years. We won't even be able to survive 4 years. Because if you understand that spiritual parasite, which is what it is, the host has said no. And literally, you're seeing the parasite literally dying. How does the parasite die? Through its resources. The resource tie. Well, don't you want these dollars? Don't you want to become rich? Don't you want to become famous? For what? For the parasite to leech off of you and then eventually kill you? Because that's actually what's happened. I mean, let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. All the stories on out there of when I was signed and I was getting ready to be famous as a rapper, I met Satan himself. No kidding, huh? I met some demonic powers and principalities. No kidding, huh? You're going to play with Satan's toys. You're going to win Satan's prizes. Now, the Most High will give you what you need. But the moment that you have the greed, guess what? Now you're in his vices. Oh, you can defile yourself. And when you defile yourself, you're going to get that penalty. Now you have these folks there in the mainstream talking. There's a list of all the people that were dirty. I mean, literally unclean, dirty. Literally, biblically unclean, dirty. How do you deal with that? Think about this. Has anybody truly thought about this? For folks and how this thing is going to go? They don't want to. They don't want to go into the draft, and they yelled out, they cried out, and then the Most High tortures them with something else. The reality is that when you're starting to see the game and you can interpret now what the game is doing, the game doesn't things don't last much longer when the game has been exposed. When wickedness has been exposed, what are you going to do when you've gotten the error? What are you going to do when you have gotten the penalty for greed? They're telling you, they're explaining that. All the things that they had to do to defile themselves. I mean, you just saw it last, what, a couple months ago? People crying on the stand. I had to get defiled. They just said they literally showed all their secrets. That that's the price you want to pay. That's the price you will pay for serving their Elohim, their principalities, their wickedness. See, people don't think that their wickedness doesn't come with the cost. It always does. And it's way more than what they thought that they could handle. Oh, we could just enslave the Most High's people. Not a big deal. And now they're realizing it's more than they can handle. Well, do let's do cunningly. Let's be skillful about this. How can we delete them and get them back in line? See, they're setting themselves up. Why does it say the plans of the wicked fail against the righteous? Because why? Because as a people, we're saying we see the game and we're done. But see, that's not it. That's not all. Because the reality is that things are going to have to get worse because it's not just that people recognize what's happening. There's a prescription to this. Is that as we recognize what's happening, we're going to have to turn back and repent and ask the Most High to heal us. Second Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14. See, when we decide to open up our mouths and say, Father, help us, because we're trapped. Oh, you don't like us. You must hate us because you're asking the Most High to help you. Do you see how that's going to go? Why are you asking the Most High to help you? You're being racist. Why are you asking the Most High to deliver you from out of oppression? You're being racist. Am I, right? That's their last vestige. You realize that's their last game. Because it's not going to be a civil unrest for us. It's going to be a civil unrest for them because they're going to fight each other trying to say, well, I'm not the racist. Funny thing is, Jacoba and Teyu called this years ago. We're just now seeing it. We're now seeing the setup for it. So, again, family, my apologies. I ran late, but this is a day I gotta get up on out of here a little early, a little earlier. Thank you for those that joined me last night on that special to support the container. I know, family, things are hard. I get it. But we knew we were going to be here. And that's just like the Most High to already have a ram in the bush. He's already given that. But now we have to trust and believe his word. That's just not for you all. That's also for me. And I'm literally seeing that, staring at everything. But it's an awesome sight to behold how the Most High has truly given us favor way beyond what we could even think or imagine. That's why they're truly, truly mad with us. We've been trying to do this for 500-600 years. And y'all are doing leaps and bounds within a decade. Within a decade. How would that make you feel? Favor ain't fair, and that's what happens when you are the Most High's children. That's what happens when you know what that word says. That's what happens when you understand how that word is true and it never fails. So, with that said, I do have to get up on out of here. Family, thank you for your gifts, your support. I know that we're in a season, but I also pray that just as the Most High blesses me through your hands, that you will also be blessed. We're in a season. It's not going to be like this forever. It's just we're in a season. We've been in this season for years. Some folks over a decade. But now we're starting to see how our faith, how our obedience is paying off. So, with that said, I got to wrap up right here. Most High willing, I won't have any distractions tomorrow getting on. And then you'll be able to catch me 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time as we go from there. So with that, family, shalom, salama, siyemi, shalom, peace and blessings, Yasharel.